So good evening. I am Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. Tonight's Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or ULURP, public hearing will be conducted via the WebEx video conference platform. On the agenda this evening are 5 applications currently under review by my office. Please note that this virtual hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. Viewers may join the hearing via the link and password on the following slide, which you guys saw, and request to testify via the WebEx chat function. We will also accept testimony by phone from those who would like to call in. If you plan to join by telephone, please mute all other devices when called to testify. This will ensure that your testimony is received and recorded. Finally, viewers may submit comments to Ask Reynoso at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for my consideration. We remind viewers who wish to testify that you must enter your name in the WebEx chat and state intent to speak on the application. After the question and answer portion following each presentation, we will call speakers in order of chat request. Please call the first item and let us begin.
First calendar item number 1 is Roundtable Senior Center 220212 PQK. This is an application by the Department for the Aging and the Department for Citywide Administrative Services to secure continued use of the senior center occupying approximately 17,600 square feet in a privately owned building located at 1175 Gates Avenue in the Community District 4. Community Board 4 approved this application on February 16th, 2022. Would the DFTA and DCAS representatives please state your name for the record and present this application?
John Cosa with DCAS.
Nasheed Rumi from Department for the Aging.
Lee Boys, Department for the Aging.
Sandra Christian, Riseboro Community Partnership.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good evening, everyone. This application is an acquisition application for the Roundtable Senior Center. Next slide, please. The New York City Department for the Aging and the co-applicant New York City Department for Citywide Administrative Services, DCAS, are seeking approval for continued use for DFTA Senior Center for a lease term of 20 years. The Senior Center has been a part of Bushwick community since 1972 and has been operated by Riseboro Partnership. Next slide, please. The project area is at Brooklyn Community District 4. Next slide, please. Senior Center is located at 1175 Gates Avenue, Brooklyn. It's 1.5 blocks north of Broadway, and Bushwick Avenue is located at the south. Evergreen Avenue is to the north, and Gates Avenue to the southeast. The surrounding area is zoned in R6. The immediate area is predominantly a variety of residential uses, such as 1 to 2 family residential building, row houses, multifamily walk-up, multifamily elevator building, and mixed-use residential and commercial buildings. Next slide, please. The public facilities nearby include Cristo Missionary Church, Palmetto Gardens, a 115-unit NYCHA housing facility, and some DOE school buildings, including PS 75, PS 299, and the Brooklyn Law School for Law and Technology. The Senior Center is served by Gates Avenue Subway Station, serviced by J&Z train, located 2 blocks south on Broadway. There are 2 bus stops providing transportation access to the site, B52 and Q24. Next, please. The Neighborhood Senior Center is vital to the community, serving 100 seniors per day and providing 3 meals a day. They provide 25 breakfast, 60 lunch, and 30 dinners. Next. The Senior Center operates 5 days a week and provides a variety of services. Includes meal service, social service, application case assistance, social activities such as billiard, bingo, recreational activities, educational activities such as yoga, tai chi, Zumba, chair aerobics, arts and craft classes, computer classes. There are numerous health and nutrition promotional classes available, and 3,500 people over the year participate in health promotion activities. Next. The Roundtable Senior Center occupies 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor of the existing building at 1175 Gates Avenue, consisting of 17,600 square feet. The rest of the building is occupied by Early Learning Daycare Center operated by SCA. The clientele is mostly age 60 years and above. Most of them arrive by foot or via public transportation. Visitors enter the facility from left side of the building at grade on the Gates Avenue side. The building is served by 2 staircases. Elevator is located near the building, an entrance which accommodates members using wheelchair and other disabilities. Next, please. Next. Out of 17,600 square foot, the 3rd floor primarily consists of offices and recreation room, senior lounge. The case management office, game room, TV room, arts and crafts room, and computer room is on the 4th floor, and kitchen and dining area is on the 5th. Men's and women's restroom are located all 3 floors. Next. With the help of landlords, we are proposing for few exterior improvements that including addition of planters, addition of all new windows, repair of sidewalk, removal of any existing graffitis and unauthorized paintwork, painting the exterior door, removal of roll-down shutter. Next. To facilitate the project, an acquisition approval of 70,600 square feet of space within 1175 Gates Avenue existing building is required for continued use of existing senior center for a 20-year lease term. Next. This concludes our presentation, and we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. My first question is, how does DCAS decide to pursue a lease agreement with a private property owner as opposed to an outright purchase of a site?
We've been at this property basically since it was built in the 70s. And at my level, I'm given the project to renew a lease. And so I try to do that. Whether we purchase it or lease it, it's decisions that aren't made at my level. I think it probably at the mayoral level or somebody higher than me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I guess it's your answer, but that's not necessarily an acceptable answer. You are the agency in charge of leasing, of handling either lease agreements or I'm assuming the purchasing of a site. And if not, do you talk to the people that I guess purchase sites in the city of New York, or is your agency siloed from the rest of the work?
Well, I work for the leasing group in DCAS, so our specific group just does leasing. There is a group that does acquisitions. How these acquisitions, well, how it's decided to acquire a specific property, I don't know the answer. I could find out and get back to you on that. It's just not what our specific group does, but DCAS does acquire properties. You're correct, of course. And I'll find out for you.
Yeah, I just want to know who makes the determination that we move to your division versus the acquisition division.
Okay.
Can you please describe what ventilation and antimicrobial measures will be implemented in the new building, considering that it is a senior center and they are the most vulnerable population when it comes to COVID and other flu and other variants of the flu?
Currently, we are proposing new HVAC system, and which is an improvement upon what they have right now. So we hope to that is going to definitely improve the current status. And also, we're getting new windows, so there will not be any leakage, or it will improve in general the current status. Yes.
Okay, the building itself, and I'm very familiar with this building specifically because I was the council member of the district in which this is in. Care deeply about this building, which is why I want the community to have it. Would love for the current not-for-profit that manages this site to be able to own it, and allow for them to continue to do the work of supporting our seniors and our young people for the foreseeable future, without having to succumb to the interest or the special interest or the real estate market, which is why I would love to know why DCAS made a decision to move to leasing versus acquisition. But the building itself is not a very attractive building, and wanted to know if there was any opportunities where the city might insert itself to improve its facade through their arts organization, just figuring out a way to make the building more attractive on the block. Is there any intentions for changing the exterior of the building by the city?
Not sure if this is my question to answer. We're doing some small upgrades to the facade in terms of the planter and getting rid of the roll-up gate and painting, both doors to be the similar color. There weren't any other plans made. And there is a scope of work that's part of the lease renewal that's largely for interior work.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess I'm going to call for testimony from speakers in the chat and on the phone. So we remind viewers wishing to testify to message all attendees in the WebEx chat and state intent to speak on the application. We will now call speakers in order of chat requests and then take testimony from those joining by phone. Please note that comments are limited to 2 minutes. Once all speakers have been called, I will ask the staff to close the item. If
Just checking to see if there's anyone who wishes to testify. Just checking.
Thank you, John.
No members of the public are here to testify on this item. So we can close this item and move on to the next one.
Thank you. Thank you to the city and the representatives of the property. And we'll probably be asking more questions in the future and look forward to make a recommendation and determination on the application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to calendar item number 2, Broadway Triangle, Bartlett Crossing, 220209 HAK. This is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development pursuant to Article 16 of the General Municipal Law of New York and Section 190C of the New York City Charter, affecting a vacant city-owned lot at 2931 Bartlett Street in Community District 1. HPD is requesting Urban Development Action Area designation, Urban Development Action Area project approval, and property disposition to the selected developer. These actions would enable a 9-story building with 29 rental units. A portion would be reserved for the formerly homeless, and 20% would be affordable via the voluntary inclusionary housing program. Community Board 1 voted to approve this application on February 8th, 2022. Would the HPD representative please state your name for the record and present the application? Just give us one moment.
Hi, excuse me. My name is Frank Lang. We're one of the presenters, but I don't think we're on. Oh, here we are.
Charlie, can you just state your name and for the
Yes.
record? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Stewart with St. Nick's Alliance.
I'm Frank Lang. I'm the Director of Housing for St. Nick's Alliance.
Please proceed.
I'm not sure if HPD is on yet. Otherwise, we could start. And,
Yeah, is Makita on?
Makita is not in. Makita is not in yet.
okay, well, we could start then, and then. Thank you all very much for allowing us to present. This is a project located in the Broadway Triangle, which is it's in Community Board 1, and it adjoins Community Board 3 and adjacent to Community Board 4 at the southern end of Community Board 1 in North Brooklyn. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The applicant is the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and the Development. The sponsor is United Neighborhood Partners, which is a joint venture of 4 local community organizations. The project is to the disposition of one city-owned property, block 2269, lot 52. Next slide, please. The United Neighborhood Partners is made up of 4 not-for-profit organizations, St. Nick's Alliance, ourselves, LeSource, Southside United, Riseboro Community Partnership, and United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg. Together with contractor builder Mega Construction, we are developing 4 city parcels in the Broadway Triangle. Today, we're going to be talking about the disposition of 1. Next slide, please. The 4 city parcels are located in north of Flushing Avenue, south of Broadway, and east of Union Avenue in Brooklyn. Next slide, please. The sites in yellow outlined are the ones that are being disposed of. The other projects that you see highlighted are other buildings that have been developed by members of United Neighborhood Partners. And together, we are developing these sites collaboratively to create an integrated neighborhood in what was once industrial area or vacant lots. Next slide, please. There are, the development is in 4 development sites on 3 development sites on 4 lots. There's site A1 and A2 that are being developed together. We'll be talking today about site A2, which is a vacant lot, which was formerly had a building on it, which was demolished prior to, subsequent to a 2009 rezoning. Sites B and C are being developed with by our partners into all low-income housing. I'll let my colleague Charles Stewart continue the presentation.
Sure. You can go to the next slide. So our overall vision for the project is for affordability, open space, access to community facilities, and energy efficiency. So we will have 390 units of affordable housing, over 20,000 square feet of landscaped open space, community facilities, including a 7,000 square foot space on the ground level of Site C that St. Nick's Alliance will occupy and operate our workforce development office, moving from up the street at 790 Broadway down to this new location. The other community facility is a 2,000 square foot space on Site B, which will be jointly programmed and operated by the 4 partner organizations, and a 1,300 square foot space on Site A1 that will operate as a non-for-profit coffee shop. All the buildings in the project will be designed to passive house standards. They will be 100% electric, flood resilient, and will have rooftop solar arrays. And we also anticipate that all of the sites will go through the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program to remediate the contaminated soil on the sites and use the tax credits to fund the development. Next slide. So if you could go to the previous slide. Okay, just the next one. Looks like we skipped one. So this, yeah, so site A1 and A2. A1 is in the foreground in this image. Yeah, this one's fine. So site A1 and A2 are being developed as one project. Together, the sites will be 78 units of housing and 1 supers unit, and they'll have all of the sustainability features as the rest of the project. So drilling down even further to site A2. So this is the site that we're here to talk about tonight. This is the only site going through ULURP. The other sites were approved in 2009 for disposition. So this is the smallest building in the project. It's a very small lot. It's just 50 feet wide, 100 feet deep. We're planning 29 units of housing on this site with a landscaped rear yard, community room, and bike storage on the ground level. And so, as I mentioned, it's a very small site. So to free up some space in the ground level, we're moving the laundry room up to the 8th floor and attaching it to the roof terrace. So it'll be a really nice laundry room and space for residents to enjoy some outdoor space while they're doing their laundry. Next slide. So here we are showing the affordability and unit mix in site A2, the ULURP site. So it has 3 formerly homeless units, 3 units at 30, 40, and 50% of AMI, 11 units at 60% of AMI, and 6 units at 80%. Next slide, please. And so this slide just shows the ranges of rent for each affordability level and the corresponding income limits. Next slide. And this slide just shows a rendering of the building. And so this is standing in Bartlett Playground facing northwest. You can see that the site is situated between a new building to the west. This rendering, when it was done, that building hadn't been built yet. It's currently standing, so we'll go right between that building and the small 3-story building east of that. Site A2 will be built approximately 10 inches above grade, with the utility rooms located on the ground level and the mechanical equipment located on the roof to protect against flooding. The building structure will be block and plank, and like the other sites, the facade will be fiberglass reinforced concrete panel system that will create a unified look and feel across all of the buildings to create some cohesion for the neighborhood. The next slide, please. And then, so this slide just shows our anticipated timeline. We certified into ULURP in December 2021 and hope to have approval by late summer, early fall. Next slide, please. And so one element of the project that we wanted to highlight is the outreach committee, which will be formed to ensure broad dissemination of advertising and application opportunities across Community Boards 3. So all of the sites in the project have a 50% preference for Community Boards 1 and 3. And so we have enlisted 3 partner organizations in Community Board 3 to help us ensure that residents of that board, in addition to Community Board 1, are notified of all opportunities well in advance for applying for housing in these buildings. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation on Bartlett Crossing Site A2, and welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. This is also a project that I'm extremely familiar with, as I was part of the team that helped litigate to get us to where we are. And as I understand it, there are court-ordered restrictions as to exactly what can and can't happen on this site. So I have very few questions to ask because as it has been litigated, and I agree with the conclusion that was put forth by the courts. And I again thank everyone that was participating in making that happen. Just want to, for informational purposes, for the affordable housing units, can you please indicate the qualifying income range for the prospective households based on household size, the distribution of units by bedroom size, and the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms?
We put up one slide that partially showed that. It didn't break it down for each unit based at 30, 40, 50%, but there was a range up there. It both showed the rent range and, showing from studio up to the 3 or 4 bedroom and the income range. We could show that back up if people want to see it, but it's in the presentation. If you would like us to break it out by bedroom and income, we could send that right after this.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that after. And then I think that's the only question that I have actually. So I want to call for testimony from speakers in the chat and on the phone.
Just checking right now, Mr. Borough President. There are no members of the public here to testify. We can close this item.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next calendar item?
Yes. The calendar item number 3 is 2300 Cropsey Avenue. This is an application by Cropsey Partners LLC pursuant to section 197C and 201 of the New York City Charter, affecting 3 properties in the middle of a block bounded by 24th Avenue, Bay Parkway, the Belt Parkway, and Cropsey Avenue in Community District 11. The requested zoning map amendment would establish a C24 overlay within an existing R6 district. This would enable 34,227 square feet of commercial uses at 2300 Cropsey Avenue, a 23-story as-of-right residential and community facility building to be occupied by a supermarket and local retail. Community Board 11 voted to approve this application with conditions on February 10th, 2022. Would the applicant representative please state your name for the record and present this application?
Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. Good evening, Borough President Reynoso.
Good evening, Richard. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So I'm going to launch into the rezoning discussion. We're here to discuss the 2300 Cropsey Avenue rezoning. This was approved by Community Board 11 by the overwhelming vote of the Community Board. We're hoping to get the support of the Borough President as well. Joining me tonight is the applicant team, which is numerous. I will introduce Alex Liu, who is a representative from the applicant, Michael Kang, the project architect, Kevin Williams and Amber Cartalian from Equity Environmental, and Dominic Recchia, who is performing government relations services for this application. Next slide. So what are we seeking to do here? This is a very straightforward rezoning. This is merely a commercial overlay rezoning, which would seek to place a C24 overlay on the existing R6 district. So this is not a rezoning which affects the bulk of the building, which is a 23-story as of right mixed residential and community facility building. This would merely allow for the ground floor, roughly 35,000 square feet, to be used for commercial use. Next slide. So as you can see from the zoning map, this is an R6 district, and what's noted here is that although there are M districts to the southwest on the other side of the Belt Parkway, and although there are commercial districts on Bath Avenue to the north, Cropsey Avenue here does not have a commercial overlay, which is actually a difficult situation for many of the local residents. Putting a commercial overlay here will allow for, as intended, local retail such as a supermarket to service the surrounding area. This is considered to be very important, particularly given the large percentage of elderly living within the surrounding area. There are at least 4 nursing homes within the surrounding area, 2 of which are on either side of this site. So the lack of a commercial overlay here does hurt their ability to shop for everyday items. Next slide. This tax map just merely demonstrates the duration of the commercial overlay. It is merely a 200-foot wide commercial overlay, which primarily encompasses the site, as well as a small portion of the adjacent lots, which would really not be able to take advantage of the commercial overlay rezoning. Next slide. And then the slide after that, this is merely a continuation of the tax map. The next slide is the land use map, which really well illustrates why we think this is a meritorious rezoning. You can see the 2 large institutions in blue to either side of the mapped area, and you can see the highlighted area in red and also in the dotted lines. As you can see, there's a large and dense residential population around the site, and yet there is no commercial use. I will tell you that on numerous site visits, we actually saw elderly people who were walking by the site with shopping carts where they had obviously gone way further afield to get their groceries and such. So this is really something which the community board was behind us on in allowing us to bring some much needed commercial use to this immediate area. Next slide. The next slide demonstrates the building, which is currently in process. Again, the bulk of the building is unaffected by this. In fact, in the event that there was no rezoning here, the community facility use, which occupies the floors above the commercial use, would continue down to the commercial floors. So it's not even that you couldn't get certain uses like office use, nonprofit office, doctor's office, but you wouldn't be able to get local retail, which is what's sought from the current application. If you want to page through the pictures, you'll come to the first page of the site plan. So you can see just a rough layout showing the commercial base of the building in the center, and then the taller residential portion in the U shape around the center. Also on to the east of the site is the Haim Solomon Nursing Home, which is part of the same zoning lot as the development site. With that, if you want to, you can page through, I think, the last slide, which just demonstrates further layout on the ground floor and the rear yard. That's really the bulk of the presentation. You see a rendering of the building in front of you. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. A couple of questions. Can you just walk us through the proposed loading and parking plan for the planned residential community facility and now commercial uses? When we originally saw this plan, we just had a hard time really trying to work through flow here with a school, a commercial property, and just the general traffic. And as you know, Richard, Cropsey sometimes uses an alternate right to the Bell Parkway. We just want to understand how we're going to do our best to maintain a good pedestrian and also vehicular traffic flow.
Sure. So thank you for the question and for the opportunity to address this. This is something that we discussed in length at the community board. I think probably what might be better for this would be to introduce 2 members of the applicant team. The first would be Michael Kang, who's the project architect, who can better walk us through some of the parking and loading berth layout issues. And then the other would be Kevin Williams of Equity Environmental, who can discuss some of the traffic impacts and the discussions we had at the community board on this. So maybe if we want to load the site plan demonstrating the ground floor, Michael, is this something that you can talk about?
Yeah, the ground floor is really access ramp, a vehicle ramp on the, if we can turn to the site plan. The ramp is going down to the cellar, and the cellar have, yes, the site plan. The ramp is from Cropsey Avenue going down to the cellar. We have 81 parking space at the cellar level. And also we have parking space, 134 parking space on the second floor. And we have 2-car elevator from the cellar floor goes up to the second floor for parking. Total, we have 236 parking space, and it's more than enough, more than required by the zoning. And we have 2 loading berths at the cellar too.
And I don't know, Kevin, if you can speak a little bit to the traffic implications and the work that we did, particularly in clearing this with environmental assessment and review.
Yes, I was trying to pull up the loading diagram that I prepared. So this is Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental, Brooklyn Borough President. Pleasure to be here. And so maybe I can provide a little bit of clarity on this. And I did prepare a diagramming scenario, and hopefully I can find that after I speak. But, you know, so yeah, actually, if you would leave it here for a moment, actually back to that slide. Okay, so the residential entry is at the center of this sort of pedestrian element and overhang where it says pavement, sort of right at the center on the left. And then the school entry is at the top of that drawing where it says 30-foot rear yard equivalent. And then the commercial, so let me know if you guys don't follow that. I do have a pretty good diagram here that clarifies it. And then on Cropsey, this is your commercial store frontage. And so the idea here is, you know, one of the reasons why this building works is because like the companion of the local retail uses with the school have different arrival and departure requirements. And so the school loading requirements, what we are contemplating right now, and that's an as of right use, but that doesn't mitigate our responsibility to thoughtfully consider how the building would operate. But the idea is that we're basically looking at two school buses that would need a loading area, and that would take place on Cropsey, and there would be a loading area between the arrival period, which would be staggered to prevent the mass of the school coming at once. So you'd have a 30-minute period for K through 2 students, and then 3, 4, and 5 would come after. And so the drop-offs and pickups associated with parents there would come after. The bus loading area, because there's a crosswalk in the middle of the site, which is actually an excellent improvement along this area of Cropsey. There have been 3 enhanced crosswalk locations running to basically connect from the shore side to the upland side. And then in terms of how loading for potential tenants related to retail or you know, commercial uses, if there's a supermarket or smaller vendors, which I think is a likely mix. Basically, what we had discussed is there would be no loading or unloading allowed on Cropsey during arrival and departure periods. So from 7 to 9, you know, the departure period actually would run from about 7:30 to 8:30. So we would give a little bit of buffer. The buses would depart, obviously, as soon as the loading and unloading is done to clear the zone. But we don't want to conflict pedestrian arrivals with sort of truck unloading and loading on the sidewalk. So the idea is from 7 to 9, there would be no commercial loading. And then from 3 to 5, to give a buffer around the departure period, there would be no truck loading and unloading. And so the tenants would have to subscribe, you know, to that operational arrangement, which is common in mixed use buildings. And then in terms of parents arriving and departing, and we, you know, did a little bit of back of the envelope in terms of private car arrivals. And we're basically looking at about 50 to 60 vehicle trips between, say, 7:30 and 8:30 or 7 to 9 generally, because there's some stragglers. And the idea is they've created a cutout at the back of Shore Parkway and provided enhanced sidewalk and streetscape. And there's enough turning movement to be able to turn around and come down there. And basically, given the volume of vehicle traffic that's coming in, it's relatively modest. Obviously, special needs folks and that sort of thing would be accommodated on Cropsey, and you would have pedestrian stewards and representatives, safety personnel from the school accommodate that. And we also directly, so one of the other things is we don't want to forget about the tenants, right? And where, so there is an arrival area for the tenants, and typical with New York City, like move-ins, right? So this building's going to be, having a lot of people move in. That, as is typical in New York City, would be required to happen during the weekends. But nowadays you do also have a lot of like Uber Eats drop-offs and Amazon vans and those sorts of things. And one of the things, and again, I will provide you the diagram for this. There's a 30-foot to 40-foot area directly in front of the residential, basically the area where the school is at, that we carved out for residential loading. And so bus loading would kind of be in the center of the site. Residential, like loading, taxi pickups, such as they happen and that sort of thing, would happen at that front corner of the 30-foot rear yard. So I'm sorry, like verbally, it's sort of hard to rationalize this for you, but that is the setup. And as Rich will attest, Equity Environmental works on probably more schools than any other consulting firm, and so we definitely have considered this what appears as a complicated mix and how to manage those arrivals and departures. And while Borough President, if you have other questions in the meantime, I'll try to pull up the simplified diagram just so the
Kevin,
statements
we made a request from the Department of Transportation to provide those signs for loading and unloading, so they do line up with the school departure. So just I know you're making a commitment that the loading and unloading would happen on off peak times, and we would just love to see that concretely put forth through the Department of Transportation and loading zones for the potential tenant. And I kind of will get to that too, because I want to ask about who that tenant would be or could be. But I wanted to start with this building itself, though, is as of right, as the owner of this property attempted to utilize the 421A program in an effort to achieve some affordable housing units within the market rate development.
So I know Alex Liu, who's a representative of the applicant, is on with us. The building would not qualify for 421A. It is a condo building. So basically the discussion, because early on the building was as of right, they started plans and they started construction of the building, and then the discussion with stakeholders in the community as well as with Councilmember Justin Brannan was, can we do something here on the ground floor which is kind of better than medical office and would maybe alleviate some of the pressure felt in the local area that doesn't really have a lot of retail or food stores. So the building itself really is not availing itself of 421A, nor can it, given the ownership of the units. But the commercial just kind of complements the use of the building.
Rich, could I say something? Mr. Borough President, how you doing? It's Dominic Recchia.
It's nice to see you, Dominic. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you. I represented this area for many years, and this lot has been vacant. We had a lot of problems with it. But more important, there is such a need for some type of supermarket, because this is a food desert in this whole area. There is no place really for people who live in this area to go shopping. And when we met with Justin Brannan, we had a long conversation about this whole issue about how we could get more supermarkets in this area. And we're in the process of talking to some of the food market companies to come in there, but also to work with the community board, to work with us, to work with everybody involved, so we could accommodate.
So, Councilmember, thank you so much. I wanted to ask, how do we guarantee that it will be a supermarket? Because I agree, we looked at a map and we're looking for grocers and for supermarkets and so forth, and understand the need. But sometimes these things happen, and a Target will come in there. Well, a Target has some food, but a clothing store, the Gap, will be in there for all we know. How are we ensuring that it will be a grocer?
Well, what I could say is you have 86th Street, which is a few blocks away, and there's all stores there. There's no grocery stores. Okay. You have Caesar's Bay Bazaar, which is right off the Bell Parkway, where there's a Kohl's, there's a Target, there's a Best Buy, there's the big box stores. So they're not going to come here. And right now, I personally am reaching out to Food Town to speak to them because I've spoken to someone, they might have an interest, and we have speaking to other companies to see if they're interested. We are trying our best to get a supermarket in here, also to keep the, the local councilman who really wants us, he's also helping us, reaching out to different companies. And if
And I'll help too, Dominic. The National Supermarket Association, I know their leadership, so I'll bring them to you. And they're the Associateds, the food. I think they do food towns as well. So they're always looking for new spaces, especially in areas where they think there are deserts. So I'll make sure that I connect you with them as well.
we would love for you to help us out with this.
Okay, because the thing with me is like, if it's not in writing, Dominic, I get a little concerned. So all I'm saying is, I really want to see a supermarket there as well. Should this be a project that we want to move forward with? And the only way to guarantee those type of things is that we have leases before we approve these things, because there is no, legal opportunity or mechanism for us to make this binding. But the last thing I want to do is approve this, and then, in 5 years,
I know.
not see a grocery store. Yeah, I guess Justin will deal with that more so than I would. He'll get killed for it, not me.
Listen, we would love to have a lease. Believe me,
Oh, I hear you.
we'd love to have a lease right now.
And
Okay.
importantly, Borough President, the flexibility right now that we have with having a commercial overlay and no definitive plan, the community board had other conversations with us, which was, maybe that part of it would be nice to have a local bakery or a coffee shop or something of that nature. So, right now we're committed to food store for at least a significant portion of the square footage, but we are, as we further conversations with Councilmember Brannan, we look forward to really optimizing the use here and having a real contributor to the surrounding area. So, but we thank you for your recommendations and for your offers of help.
Absolutely. And then just the passive house design. Is there an effort here to for solar energy generation, blue or green or white roof, deep curbside rain gardens? Like, what are we doing in and around the space to just like really try to address, the climate issues that we see are prevalent in Brooklyn and the world?
Yeah, I mean, this is somewhat of a little bit of a wrinkle in this application because we've got a building which is basically almost built. And I know that oftentimes we come to your office and we've got applications for rezonings and upzonings, which, significantly increase the square footage and development rights on the property. That's not this. So, I know Michael, the architect who's on with us, has been working on the building with DOB and has been working on compliance with energy code issues. I don't know whether or not we're really in the position to do anything beyond that. We can probably take a look and respond in writing. But having said that, I think we're somewhat fixed in our building design and our sustainability measures. Somewhat of a little bit of a different situation than other applications we come in with.
Yeah, and I hear that. There's little we can do there. There's always a way, Richard, but I'm not gonna. I guess you'll see it in my recommendations. But also the local hiring and procurement on this project. So what's because it's already started, are there folks from in and around this community that are actually working here? Is it a union site? Like just understanding,
Sure.
The implications of the jobs in and around this area.
Yeah, it was built non-union. I think one of the advantages here is that the creation of really what amounts to be 70,000 square feet of commercial and community facility use, while the procurement process and the building process may not have been such, the proposed user of the school space is the Hebrew Language Academy, a local charter school with other locations in Brooklyn, who is excited to take the space, is going to be having local kids here and is going to be, and importantly, as we like to think about it, community facilities such as schools, it's not merely just a community facility use, it's also a job generator. So the anticipation would be that the school is going to be creating, a large employment population, and the stores here, we are hopeful that, as the commercial develops, that those are going to be local jobs that are used as well. We may not have the control that we want over who actually works at the food store, but the intention would be, of course, that it would be advantageous to have local Community Board 11 residents and people from the surrounding area working at the retail. So again, we're kind of dealt the hand that we have right now, and we've got a building which is almost built. But we look forward to this, the 70,000 plus square feet of commercial and community facility as being an important job generator in the area.
Yeah. So Richard, the last thing I guess I would say is, I know we're coming in like while the building is being constructed. We're making requests here. The potential siting of a grocery of a grocer or a supermarket here is going to be very, very helpful to the developer here.
Sure.
We are, as you know, in all these facilities that we're putting for community facilities, the square footage, what they're paying for square footage is extremely low. They're practically giving these spaces away in some areas just to fill the space, and they're not fruitful. So there is a huge reward here or opportunity for this developer. So just, we can ask for more, and just because it's being built doesn't mean that, we're kind of got our hands tied behind our backs. I would disagree with that. So in my recommendations, you might see some requests that speak to the local hiring and the work that's moving forward and so forth. A New York-based supermarket, if possible, an owner from Brooklyn, I don't know. But we just really got to think about doing more, and we can, because this will be a boon for the developer. Should he get a grocer at 50, 60,000 square feet.
Understood. I mean, we appreciate that. We hear you. And I'm going to work with the applicant to make those efforts. I will tell you that this is a longstanding builder developer in Brooklyn and in Queens. And we've been on multiple applications with them. So we'll do our best, and we appreciate the recommendations and in effectuating as much as we can.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, council member. Appreciate it. And thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. At this point, we're going to remind viewers, if they want to testify, to message all attendees in the WebEx chat and state the intent to speak on the application, and we will call on speakers in order of chat requests and then take testimony from those joining by phone. Please note that comments are limited to 2 minutes. So we'll give the team a couple of seconds to see if anybody raises their hand.
Don't have anyone here to testify, so we can close this item.
Thank you. Calendar item 4, 98 3rd Avenue. Thank you, Richard and company. Thank you so much. Looking forward to eventually giving you my recommendation. Have a good day or good night. All right, thank you.
We'll see you a little bit later.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Calendar item number 4, 98 3rd Avenue rezoning, 200335 ZMK. N 200336 ZRK. This is an application by 98 3rd Avenue Realty, LLC, pursuant to section 197C and 201 of the New York City Charter, affecting 10 properties on a block of 3rd Avenue bounded by Bergen, Nevins, and Wyckoff Streets in Community District 2. The request zoning map amendment would change the project area from an M1-2 to an R6B and R7D/C2-4 districts. The zoning text amendment would establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area, a co-terminus with the rezoning area. These actions would have facilitated an 8-story, 27,900 square foot mixed development at 98 3rd Avenue with 24 apartments and 3,523 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Up to 8 units would be affordable to the households earning on an average 80% AMI pursuant to MIH option 2. Community Board 2 voted to approve this application on February 9th, 2022. Would the applicant representative please state your name for the record and present this application.
Yes, good evening. Nice to see you, Mr. Borough President, and your team. This is Eric Blatnick. You've done a fine job presenting the application. I almost took all the wind out of our sails because the application is very straightforward, but we like to present to you its history because it has quite a history to it. And thank you for giving us a chance to present. You can see the site here is in the presentation on the screen in front of you right now. As you just described, it's a relatively small property, and we'll show you in a second. It's an existing automotive service station on 3rd Avenue in what used to be, it was an urban renewal area. And the area has been left as a manufacturing zoning district while the neighborhood has blossomed around it, of course, in the last few decades. So it's been left with a manufacturing zoning heritage. We're asking the permission to rezone the block front from a manufacturing zoning district to an R7D, as you just suggested, and it would allow for this building that you see here, which would include, currently proposed, a total of 24 apartments, 6 of which would be affordable at MIH option level 1. It would include locally sourced labor during its construction and as well as during its operation, and we'll speak about that more in a moment. If you can go to the next slide, please. This gives you a good example for what the property, good idea of what the property looks like right now. There's not much to it other than the existing automotive service station. Obviously, gas stations are disappearing around the city. The owner who is on the phone with us today is Bill Wolf Petroleum. They operate most of the Shell stations that you see around the city of New York. They're pretty much in the gas station business. They would keep it as a gas station if it was earning any sort of substantial revenue that justified it. Actually, it's only earning enough revenue to operate because they've owned the property for years. It's if it was somebody came in and bought it, if you and I bought the property today, we wouldn't be able to sustain it because of obvious reasons. It's very small. It's outdated. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There you go. You can see here a good image for what the properties look like around. You can stay in the aerial. You can see here for where we are and where we're situated. You'll notice that there's residential properties all around us. We happen to be the only block front in the area that's surrounded by manufacturing. That's manufacturing. The rest of the properties around us are primarily R7A on the block front with some R6B behind us, and I'll show you that in a map in a second. While you're staring at this image, it's also important to note, and I'll give you a little bit of the history here so you're familiar with it. We've been at this for 10 years. We started under the Bloomberg administration with a variance request. They were somewhat supportive of it for a variance to build this very building. We appeared before the community board at that time. They were supportive. The council member at the time was supportive. The borough president at the time was supportive. We then proceeded through the variance into the de Blasio administration and ran into a lot of trouble for a variance. We withdrew it from the variance request and we met with city planning. They supported it. We went back to the community board. They supported it. And we met with the Civic Association of the Hvac group, and they supported it. And then now there's been another, of course, administration change. So we're telling you the history of this simply not for any other reason other than to let you know if you're interested about the history of how long it takes to get a building approved in New York City. We're at 10 years right now, but we're still chugging along. So this is the site right here. You can see it here. What's important to note behind us, and you'll hear more about it if you haven't heard already, is there's an industrial property behind us that is not a part of our application. It's named ULURP Corporation. You may have heard about it already. They have a pending rezoning application also. It is not a part of our request. And that is why I call out the 10 years that we've been at this, because we don't want to get caught up with any request that anybody else is making. Next slide, please, if at all possible. Next slide, please. This gives you a very good feeling now for the nuts and bolts of the zoning. Obviously, you know the zoning very, very well and how it operates. So this map shows you everything you need to know about what we are asking you for without the bells and whistles. You can see right there in the area that's thatched in the black and the yellow on the avenue. That's what we're asking to make R7D. Our property is the 5,000 square foot lot in the top right corner. That's the only portion of the rezoning area that we control. The mid-block area is controlled by the city of New York. It's DCAT's own lots, and those are leased to ULURP Corporation, which owns and operates behind us in the area that's marked M12, which is the subject of the rezoning I just mentioned a moment ago. At the bottom right corner of the screen in the thatched area is a fertility clinic that's privately owned by a medical doctor. Those are the only two privately owned properties on the block. The rest of it is owned by DCAS in the mid block. I would also like to call out the section in the left there that's in red that's marked R6B. That little lot is tucked between the area we're rezoning on the avenue and the existing R6B, which is rows of brownstones or row houses there. The request is to make that lot R6B, even though it's not ours, so there's a more consistent land use pattern so that we don't leave that property out, because it wouldn't make any sense to leave that as manufacturing. So that is our action that we are asking you for. I'll click through the next slides rather quickly because I think you're a quick study and I think you understand everything I just told you. So if the presenter can just click pause there, that's great. Go back one slide, please. This slide, Mr. Borough President, is a very clear depiction on the left and the right side of what's being asked from you on the zoning map. If we were to be successful in our request and you were to support it, and the council member were to support it, then we would then be able to change the zoning map from what you see on the left side of the page to what is on the right side of the page, which is the R7D with the C2 overlay. Next slide, please. And this gives you a good idea for the building you just went through, so I won't spend too much time there. You can see what it's all about. This gives you a good example or a good idea for what can be built there, which is everything we just spoke about. So I'll go to the next slide. This gives you a good depiction of what the building would look like. The programming of the building would include ground floor commercial. The idea is to activate 3rd Avenue. We've heard over and over and over again that this portion of 3rd Avenue, despite the fact that there's residential around in the neighborhood, is devoid of substantial retail commercial activity that's of any substantive use to people that live there. So when we spoke to the Civic Association, we spoke to Hvac Gardens, everybody had ideas. Hvac Gardens had an idea of a laundromat. The Civic Association had an idea of a small food market. People had the idea of a coffee market. We spoke to the council person's office of a coffee shop of some sort. There's not that much. It's a 5,000 square foot lot. It's not what you just heard a moment ago, but the owner, Bill Wolf Petroleum, is committed to working with people to try to find something that would work there. The upper floors are just what you would imagine. They're all residential. The next slide, please. And you can skip forward to the slides on the MIH, please. If you could just click ahead a couple of more slides. We'll go right to the MIH view. Here, you can pause right here. So this gives you a good example for what the idea is with the MIH and what we're proposing. We've come up with a couple of different scenarios, but the one scenario I think that's been sticking has been to be option level 1, which would create, at the way that we've laid it out right now, is 24 units in total, 6 of which would be affordable. As you can see on the right side of the screen, there'd be 4 one-bedrooms and 2 two-bedrooms. There's not that many units to create out of the development to create that much more affordable. The council member did ask if we would play around with the idea of making all of the units smaller, thereby creating more affordability. And we've done that. We could present that to you at a later time and show that to you. But this is, I'd be happy to maybe pause here if you'd like to answer any questions, or we could show you more of the building. It's up to you, Mr. Borough President. I think you're sophisticated enough to understand what we have presented so far.
Yeah, no, I think we're good, Eric. Thank you for that presentation. And I got a couple of questions. You know how to pick them, Eric. This is one that is somewhat complicated because of I guess there are 3 interests in here outside of yours that we have to account for, and just want to see if we can unpack that a bit and you can help us with it. Because the neighboring property that you talked about that you're looking to have no influence or assistance in at the manufacturing property has put forth an application for development that'll come to us probably in the coming months. So I guess what I want to ask is, do you know of what their proposal is? Have you engaged with that developer, I guess, in seeing if there's some consistency, because some contextual work, some alignment in what you're trying to do and what they're going to be trying to do?
And that's a logical question, and thank you for bringing it to the table. We have had a discussion with them. We've been speaking with them throughout. We believe that the zoning request that we've made is consistent with what they would like to see. They've indicated that they are supportive. They've told me verbally they're supportive of our zoning change. It's what they would like to see. I believe a sliver of their property is even included in it along Bergen Street behind me. As far as being included in any sort of working together, we are not on the same page as far as creating anything together with one another. And just simply a business relationship kind of thing. We are amenable to matching building heights and to working with you and creating something that you feel would be contextual. Our building height, we have not maxed out. We run out of floor area before we get to the height. And if you wanted to see something that, where you locked us in and we signed a restricted declaration or an agreement of some sort to that, so that you get a contextual street wall and stuff like that, we're totally game with that. We're not trying to be non-player in because we recognize we're one piece of a larger puzzle there. But that's what it is.
No, I appreciate that, and we'll try to figure that out. But the last thing I want is that they create a 20-story building and you have a 8-story building, and it doesn't, and it is not contextual. So we'd love for there to be some continuity there. I know you're talking to the council members, so you guys can definitely figure that out. But just want to make sure there's some conversation, so that we don't have a site that has two completely different outcomes. The city-owned properties, and also the parking lot that's next door.
Up the tax map? Do you want to pull up the tax map while we talk about it?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, let's put up the tax map. Whoever is handling it.
That was the one in the middle we were talking about that had the.
Yeah. So have you had any conversations with the city about what they want to do with their property? Because what my concern is that from what I understand, they have a long-term lease with the folks that are doing the parking work. And my big concern is that we're going to be rezoning a project that can't be developed on by the city for the next 30 to 40 years. And just wouldn't want to lock that development into something that might not make any sense. In 40 years, it might be a R20D for all we know. And I definitely don't want to lock the city into something that just doesn't make sense.
And that makes sense. So we've had 10 years to futz around. And while we've been futzing around, we spoke to HPD on multiple occasions. We spoke to DCAS, spoke to HPD. They had no objection to the rezoning on that block front. I don't know what their plans are. I'm not privy to that. Maybe I know Jay Siegel is representing Ulano, and he's probably a little bit further along in his discussions with them. But we had spoken to them on multiple occasions, and they did not have any problems. You weren't the first person to ask of it, because they are including the rezoning. City Planning specifically asked the Brooklyn office, and that conversation was relatively recent. It was just during COVID. So I don't believe that's changed their opinion. I haven't heard any objections from HPD.
Yeah, we're gonna communicate to HPD too. We just want to know what.
Yeah,
what
I think they're okay. But they, of course, they could change their mind, and I might not know it. But they should. Last we heard, they were okay.
You answered the rest of my questions in your testimony. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. 1 second. Yeah. So you've answered all the questions. There is the one that I ask everyone. It's just about sustainability. Is it going to be passive house design? Do we have an understanding of there's going to be solar energy? This is a gas station. It would be a great thing to see it converted to electric or solar energy as a way to atone for the sins of the past, Eric.
All right. Well, the building is going to be electrically powered. That is what's about to occur. The building's going to be constructed with high insulation values. It's going to have plumbing. It's going to be, of course, low flow fixtures. It's going to have dark sky compliant lighting fixtures, which are those LED lights you see now that you can't really tell they're lights until you get right up on them. But then they do spread out a good amount of light. So all the stuff that we're all looking for in buildings now to have these high energy components to both reduce the emissions and save the energy is all going to be within the building. That includes a planted roof, includes bioswales, stormwater detention, and things of the like.
Thank you, Eric. And now I'm going to just move forward with testimony from speakers. Remember, if you want to testify, all attendees use the WebEx chat and state intent to speak on the application. We will now call speakers in order of chat requests and take testimonies from those joining on the phone thereafter. The comments are limited to 2 minutes. We'll wait a couple of seconds to see if there's anyone that would like to speak on this application.
There's no one here to testify, Borough President.
You said no one, or there is someone?
There's no one. You can close the hearing.
All right, well, thank you. We'll close this portion of the hearing. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
To go, absolutely.
Have a good night.
You too. Have a good night. Calendar item number 5, 840 Lorimer Street. This application by Zucker Enterprises LLC pursuant to sections 197C and 201 of the New York City Charter affecting the north side of Driggs Avenue between Lorimer and Manhattan Avenues in Community District 1. The zoning map amendment would change the project from M1-2 R6 to R6A C2-4 to a C4 5D district. The zoning text amendment would establish a MIH area coterminous with the project area. These actions would enable a 10-story, 83,748 square foot mixed development at 840 Lorimer Street with 74 apartments and 25,049 square feet of commercial space spread over 3 floors. Approximately 19 units would be affordable on average at 60% AMI pursuant to MIA option 1. The development would also provide 28 accessory parking spaces. Community Board 1 voted to approve this application with conditions on February 8, 2022. Would the applicant representative please state your name for the record and present the application? And also in the presentation, if they could just speak to what the conditions put forth by Community Board 1 were. To the applicant, please state your name and for the record and present this application.
Thank you, Borough President. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant, joined by Amanda Iannotti of my firm. David Parness, the applicant, is with us tonight as well. We are further joined by Richard Bienenfeld and Alyssa Gelnick from Bienenfeld Architecture, as well as Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. Borough President, we are happy to present to you the 840 Lorimer Street rezoning. Next slide. So to summarize, the rezoning takes 4 lots, the applicant's lot, which is the development site, and 3 adjacent lots, and proposes a rezoning from existing M12 R6 and R6A C24 districts to a C45D district, which is an R70 equivalent. We'll go over some of the square footages and stuff later in the presentation. What this would facilitate would be a new 10-story plus cellar mixed-use commercial and residential building with roughly 83,000 square feet of floor area and an FAR of 5.54. This would be used for residential and commercial purposes. There would be a retail component on the ground and second and third stories, as well as 74 dwelling units, of which 19 would be permanently affordable in accordance with option 1. In addition, of course, we would be mapping a mandatory inclusionary housing district on the site. Next slide. So there was a lot of discussion at the community board with regards to this proposal. If you look at the statistics here, would produce a 10-story building on McCarran Park. The floor area, 83,000 square feet, again, split between 59,000 square feet residential, 24,000 square feet ground floor commercial. The total height would be 115 feet with setbacks after 93 feet. There would be 28 attended parking spaces in the cellar and ground floors, 74 units, which are weighted more heavily towards 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, something we like to see in these developments, and 19 affordable units with a breakdown in line with those bedroom sizes. Next slide. Importantly here, the current zoning district is an R6. And although split between an R6 and an R6A, the lion's share of the property falls within the R6. You can see it located on the upper right portion of the MX8 district there in the circled area. I think maybe if we go to the next slide, you get a little bit of a better feel for the actual rezoning as proposed. You can see the development site in red, the C45D district, with the small corner site on the park and 2 lots on Manhattan Avenue. Next slide. So the C45D district here is seen as being appropriate given the fact that you've got an existing R6. The R6 development around the park largely resulted in many taller buildings, many of which were condo buildings. So part of the discussion with the community board was that creation of this building here would allow for roughly 19 to 20 affordable units. And in an area which has seen an unbelievable growth in both population as well as in rents, Community Board 1 really takes it to heart that you're creating affordability. It's not just a kind of a side note for your rezoning. It's that they really value the affordable units you're creating. Just to look at this area and this census tract over the last 10 years, you're looking at population growth amazingly of 48% and median rent increases of over 68%. This is compared with the rest of Brooklyn, which during that time had a median rent growth of roughly 15%. So this area has skyrocketed in terms of median rent. And so while mostly the projects that are brought here to CB1 by our office are for commercial manufacturing space and to create jobs, importantly, I think CB1 really gets the value of the creation of affordable units. That's particularly poignant in this case because, as you can see, there's an M12 R6 district on the property. That property would allow for as-of-right development in accordance with an R6, which would get you development upwards of 4.8 FAR. So I think if we want to just skip through the photos, which show the surrounding area. The next photo shows pictures of the facility itself. It's a 3-story existing facility, which was used for feather manufacturing. But as you go through the pictures, you're going to get to the a page which discusses the as-of-right development, which I think tells a lot of the story. A lot of pictures, keeping the photographers busy. Okay, so Amanda, I note that did we include the proposed and as of right or did not?
I don't have control of the screen, but I think the presentation that's being shared is the prior version that was from the community board.
Okay.
If I could have access to share, I can pull up the one for tonight, or I actually just resent it over to Ina. However you guys want to do it, I can share. Or
I think probably what I would do so as not to interrupt the presentation. I'm just going to tell you anecdotally about the as of right that can be built here versus the proposed. So given the existing R6 district, you are able to build a building here which is 9 stories and 110 feet. The proposal right now is for a 10-story building at 115 feet. Importantly, the building that can be built as of right is for a 64,000 square foot building with massing along the park. And the proposal allows for an 83,000 square foot building. So really, one of the things that was grasped at the community board was that the difference in square footage between the two buildings is roughly, call it 19,000 square feet. And for that 19,000 square feet, you get a building which is only marginally higher at 5 feet higher. But importantly, instead of 7 affordable units, you get 19 affordable units at that new zoning. So this is one of those applications where, we're not upzoning the bulk so dramatically. The existing R6 gets you a 4.8, close to a 5 FAR. The proposal at an R7D is for a 5.6. So there's a real, benefit that can be gained from this proposal through the, rezoning process. I think also probably what I would address, and we're kind of going through some of the plan materials here. You can see the commercial use on the ground floor and 2 upper stories, and then residential use is beginning on the 3rd story and continuing on through the building. I think probably what I would address, Borough President Reynoso, would be the discussion surrounding the conditions that were set forth at the community board and what the applicant is proposing to address those conditions. I'm going to ask Amanda. Oh, there we go. Community Board 1 recommendations. Good. So on February 1st, this was heard by the Land Use Committee of Community Board 1, which had recommendations as follows. There were 9 total recommendations, and we can discuss each of those in turn. Some of them are easy. Some of them are challenging. I'm going to start with the ones where the applicant has already indicated his willingness to comply with these recommendations. So the first is that the developer will change the current architectural design to integrate masonry that replicates the architecture of the original building in at least the first 6 floors. In response to that, the facade is now being redesigned to include brick on the upper stories. So this was seen as important to the surrounding area. One of the benefits of doing a rezoning is that there can be more of a collaborative process with regards to building facade. The owners and the applicants here, David Parness is on the phone with us. They have a long history at the site in operating a feather manufacturing facility for decades, and so are happy to retain elements of that building as a testament to the existing manufacturing use on a going forward basis. Second is that the developer will agree to contribute substantial sustained funds to McCarran Park pursuant to a community benefit agreement with or approved by the Parks Department. And these funds should be specifically designated for the park. The applicant here is happy to comply with that. We've already had conversations with Mary Selig, the CB1 representative to Parks. She has spoken to the Parks Commissioner for Brooklyn, and we are trying to earmark some very specific sustainable improvements to the park that would be accomplished through dedication of funds going forward. While we've been asked to give monies before generally, for example, in other rezonings to say Bushwick Inlet Park, this is something more substantial and sustained. This is going to be an ongoing gift, which would be effectuated most likely upon the completion C of O of the building and would proceed into the future. And so the applicant here is happy to do that. And we're just talking to Parks about how we can make the most impact in order to make improvements to the park. The third condition was that the Royal Lace paperwork sign would be incorporated into the building's facade. This is a very beautiful stylized metal sign that existed even prior to the applicant's ownership of the site. The applicant's happy to incorporate that and indeed was planning on doing so even prior to receiving this comment. The community board recommended that the 2 Manhattan Avenue properties be excluded from the rezoning. The applicant has included them as part of its land use rationale for city planning. Having said that, we understand oftentimes during this process at the community board, borough president, and council levels that properties are recommended and are removed from rezonings. So that would be something that would be done without the applicant as having to do anything. But yes, we understand that that was one of the recommendations of the community board. There will be a preference for local businesses and commercial tenants that will provide retail diversity. The applicant has already started, but intends to find local retail tenants for these ground floor commercial uses. The other discussions were around recommendations which were made, which we're hoping we can comply with. One of them was that we would not use fossil fuels for heating and air conditioning. There are a number of sustainable measures that are going to be effectuated in this building. We didn't know enough to say that the building would be completely electrical, but that is something that we are looking into. And of course, we know that there's legislation that has been proposed which would require electrification of all new buildings. To the extent that that is the law, we would comply with that, of course. But beyond that, we are seeking additional measures regarding reduction of reliance on fossil fuels.
Richard, I just want you to speak to like the technical land use items only, so not necessarily the community benefits agreement or requests. It's like technically, I think you spoke to the fact that they would love for the omission of the neighboring property as an example of what we were asking for.
Yes, so that's really all that goes to the physical plant of the building. There was one additional condition, Borough President, that the building provide 35% affordable units. That is I think that's a challenging number. We've had applications before where there have been rezonings and where we've offered and delivered on greater than the required 25 to 30%. That number came out with basically, it was towards the end of the land use discussion, and it was almost like, well, the applicant's getting a lot here. Let's ask them to do greater affordability. I can't really I wouldn't really commit and can't really commit for the owner with regards to this bigger number. It wasn't done based upon any calculation with regards to this building. It was basically just something that was offered to say they need to be giving this back. So while we are looking into increasing the affordability and are working with an affordability consultant, that's a recommendation made by the community board, which we can't necessarily say that's great. It's important here that we bring the affordability that is proposed in the building. Many of the market rate units will be subsidizing the affordable. So while we will attempt to increase the affordability, we can't at this time say that 35% works for this building, but that's just, again, a recommendation made by the board.
Thank you, Richard, for the presentation. And this one, Richard, I might have to call you in and a couple of your folks in your world. We're really trying to figure this issue out where your applicant comes in,
Yeah.
is being asked a ton of requests are being made by the community to this applicant in an effort to satisfy what they would think is a fair application. The person, your adjacent property owner is relieved of any of those responsibilities. And we're not big fans of that. And while I would love to see 35% affordable housing on this site, it is something that would be unique to only your property, not the one adjacent to yours. Also, the property owner is partly paying you a ton of money, Richard, to do this work, and that applicant that is adjacent is not necessarily a fair amount of money, a fair compensation for your work, Richard. Is what he's paying. And the applicant next door is not doing that. So it's just we're really trying to figure out a way to solve for that because it is a problem. It truly is a problem. And I think we don't want people riding the bandwagon of these applications and being able to benefit from something that they don't participate at all. But there is land use rationale as to why these folks should be included in the application. So, but it is a problem that I want to solve for, and it isn't easy. So we would love to have a conversation with DCP, which I will be having, by the way, with the chair soon, but also maybe folks from your side to help us figure that out because it's going to be a big problem, and I think it actually hurts your applicant's ability to get to the end goal here because you have to solve for a problem that you don't even it isn't even yours. So just a heads up on that one. That is something I want to talk about. Can you clarify the need for a C4-5D zoning as opposed to an R7D district paired with a commercial overlay?
Yes, so it's a good question. So the C4-5D is an R7D equivalent. So it really doesn't restrict you in terms of if you wanted to put up a 5.6 residential building, you could do so. The discussion around the C4-5D with city planning was that what this allows you to do is to carry commercial use, not just to the ground floor, but to the 2 floors above, which would allow you for some office use. It was seen as desirable when we put this application in. It also kind of is a nod to the commercial and industrial background of the property and of the area, and so kind of allows for this kind of nice balance of the building between the commercial uses on the ground 3 floors and then the residential above. So it's really just a matter of flexibility of land use. We think that we have like a good base of office users that would come from the surrounding area. So we kind of like it. It's not something we typically do, but here I think it works.
So you kind of the next concern I was going to have was like what type of tenants we're going to be seeking for, but you're thinking like office space.
Yeah, I think there's going to be ground floor commercial for sure. And we've talked a little bit to the community board about some local retail that might serve the area, maybe getting in a food store to allow for, a use that would be benefiting the immediately surrounding buildings and residents in the building. The 2 floors above, though, we really would likely not want to bring retail in there to the extent that we could do professional offices, local business, architects, attorneys, those type of uses that would probably be desired.
Okay. And then the last one, I guess the last one here, again, I think you've already alluded to this as well when it comes to like how green the building would be, the electrification that is going to be mandatory at some point, and whether or not you guys can get there. We'd love to see that. We'd love for you to get there soon. It's just the way we're moving, and I think it would be meaningful.
Yeah.
You answered the questions related to the community board's concerns. That is something that I want you to negotiate with the council member and the community board. Again, I have a conundrum that I've yet to figure out how to solve for, and I don't want to ask for this applicant to be burdened with more responsibility than its neighbor. So I guess at this point, I want to just call for testimony from speakers. So remember, anyone wishing to testify to message all attendees in the WebEx chat and state intent to speak on the application. We will now call speakers in order of chat requests. and then take testimony from those joining by phone. Please note that the comments are limited to 2 minutes. I'll now wait for my Director of Land Use to let me know if there's anybody here to testify.
There's no one here, Mr. Borough President, so we can close this item.
Thank you so much. At this point, the hearing on the ULURP items is now closed. I will review the applications and submit my recommendations to the CPC, which will hold its own hearing on these items at a later date. Thank you for participating in tonight's public hearing. Viewers may submit additional comments by emailing askreynoso@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Take care.
Thank you, Borough President. Good seeing you.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you. Take care. Bye.